They thought it was funny. That's the part that still gets me. The laughter, the cameras, the way my wife, my own wife, joined her brothers as they drove away, leaving me on the side of a deserted highway 300 miles from home, yelling, "Good luck!" like it was some kind of joke. But I didn't go home. Not that day. Not ever. Because that prank? It opened a door they never meant to open. And 5 years later, when she finally found me again, her smile froze, her knees buckled, and the color drained from her face. When she saw who was standing behind me, you don't expect your own wife to be the one who sets you up, not for something cruel anyway. Annoying. Sure. Forgetting anniversaries? Absolutely. But orchestrating a full-blown prank with her meathead brothers? That wasn't supposed to be in the marriage vows. Yet there I was, sitting in the back seat of her brother's SUV, crammed between a fishing cooler and an inflatable kayak, listening to them cackle like hyenas as we sped down a rural highway far from anything familiar. The road trip was her idea. "We need more adventure," she'd said. "We need excitement. You're too serious." Funny, coming from someone who couldn't make a doctor's appointment without panicking. But I went along with it because that's what I did. Kept the peace, smiled on cue, swallowed every insult her brothers tossed my way like I was some emotional garbage disposal. It started with them telling me we needed to pull over. "Bathroom break," one of them said. Not unusual. The man had the bladder of a squirrel. We stopped on a stretch of road surrounded by nothing but open fields, power lines humming in the distance. I stepped out, stretched my legs, looked around. It was quiet, still, peaceful, even. Then the engine revved. I turned just in time to see the SUV lurch forward, my wife hanging out the passenger window with her phone up, recording. "Good luck getting home, champ," she yelled, laughter ripping through the air like a slap. Her brothers whooped, one of them flipping me off as the tires screeched. For a moment, my brain refused to understand what was happening. I waited for them to circle back. Surely this was a joke, a stupid childish prank with a punchline. But the SUV kept shrinking into the horizon until it finally disappeared, leaving me standing in the dust with nothing but my wallet, a half-charged phone, and the sinking realization that they weren't coming back. Not then, not ever. And I had no idea that their little joke wasn't just the end of a road trip. It was the beginning of a completely different life. When the dust finally settled around my shoes, the silence hit me harder than the abandonment itself. There's a strange kind of quiet that only exists in the middle of nowhere, thick, heavy, like the air is listening. I stood there on that empty road, waiting for a laugh I somehow hadn't heard yet, waiting for the SUV to make a U-turn and come barreling back with cameras out and apologies ready. Nothing. Just wind brushing through tall grass and the distant buzz of a power line. I checked my phone. No signal, of course. Because the universe has a sense of humor, just not one that ever works in my favor. I tried calling my wife anyway, pacing in circles like an idiot. Straight to voicemail. Then I called again, and again. By the fourth attempt, I wasn't angry yet. I was just numb. Shock has a way of softening everything, like your mind is wrapping your heart in bubble wrap so it doesn't shatter too fast. With nothing else to do, I started walking. The sun was brutal overhead, sitting in the sky like it owned the place. My shoes kicked up dust with every step. There wasn't a house in sight. Not a barn, not a mailbox, not even a road sign that could tell me where the hell I was or how far the next town might be. Just miles and miles of horizon swallowing me whole. As I walked, my mind replayed every snide comment her brothers had ever made, every joke about me being soft, every time she laughed at their insults instead of defending me. I'd brushed it all off for years because love makes you stupid, loyal, blind, sometimes all three at once. A couple of miles later, I spotted a gas station. It sat crooked on the edge of the road like it was tired of existing. one flickering light, one rusted soda machine, one narrow chance of help. But when I stepped inside, sweaty and exhausted, the reality hit me. I wasn't stranded because of a prank. I was stranded because the people who were supposed to care about me didn't. And that realization was far heavier than the miles I still had to walk. Inside that dusty little gas station, I found a cracked plastic chair near the window and sank into it like my bones had finally given up. The air smelled like burnt coffee and motor oil, comforting in a weird, end-of-the-world way. A faded map hung on the wall, but it might as well have been written in ancient hieroglyphs for all the good it did me. I stared at my phone, watching the bars flicker between 1 and none like they were teasing me. Finally, one bar, one thin, trembling lifeline. I dialed my wife. The phone rang twice before she picked up, her voice bright, cheerful, like she'd just stepped out of a party. "Oh, good, you're alive," she said, laughing. I could hear her brothers in the background, still riding the high of their joke. Someone shouted, "Betty's crying!" And they all burst into another wave of laughter. My jaw clenched. "Where are you? Come back and get me." "Oh, relax," she said, the way you talk to a toddler throwing a tantrum. "It's a prank. You're always so dramatic. Just figure it out. You're resourceful, right?" Something inside me twisted. Not anger, not sadness either. Something colder. Something final. "You left me 300 miles from home," I said slowly, making sure the words landed. "This isn't funny." She sighed, annoyed. "God, you're so sensitive. Look, we're already too far to turn around. Just catch a bus or something." A bus, 300 miles, and catch one or something was the best she could offer after years together. In that moment, the bubble wrap around my heart finally tore open. I didn't yell. I didn't plead. I just listened to her laugh one more time, and that's when it hit me. I wasn't going home. Not today. Maybe. Not ever again. I must have sat outside that gas station for an hour, watching the road like it might suddenly spit out a miracle. Cars passed every now and then, mostly locals who glanced at me the same way you look at a stray dog you're not sure you should approach. My phone was dead now. My legs ached. My throat felt like I'd swallowed sandpaper. That's when the old semi-truck rumbled into the parking lot. It was massive. Faded blue paint, chrome grille dented from what looked like a long, stubborn life. The engine hissed as it slowed to a stop, and the door swung open. A tall man hopped out, wiping grease off his hands with a rag that probably hadn't been cleaned since the Clinton administration. "Afternoon," he said, voice deep and calm. "You look like someone the road chewed up and forgot to spit back out." I tried to laugh, but it came out more like a cough. "Rough day." He raised an eyebrow. "Rough days don't land people in the middle of nowhere with no car and no bag." He didn't ask the obvious question, not yet. Instead, he walked past me, grabbed a bottle of water from the cooler inside the store, and handed it to me without a word. I didn't realize how thirsty I was until the first sip hit my throat like ice. "I'm Caleb," he finally said. "I'm headed north. If you need a ride to the next town, I can take you." Normally, I would have hesitated. Getting into a stranger's truck? Every true crime documentary screamed, bad idea. But something about him, steady eyes, quiet confidence, felt grounding, safe in a way I hadn't felt in years. "I don't have money for gas," I muttered. He shrugged. "Didn't ask for any, just offering a hand." I looked at the empty road stretching behind me, then at the direction he was headed, north, away from everything I'd known. Something inside me whispered, "Go." So I climbed into the passenger seat, and as the truck pulled onto the highway, I didn't realize it yet, but that decision would change every single part of my life, forever. The hum of the semi was steady, almost comforting, like a giant mechanical heartbeat beneath my feet. For the first few miles, I stared out the window, watching the landscape blur into streaks of gold and green. Caleb didn't push me to talk. He just drove, letting silence sit between us without feeling awkward or heavy. Eventually, He spoke. So, you running from something or running to something? I didn't answer right away. What was I supposed to say? My wife abandoned me on the side of the road for fun, and somehow the humiliation hurt more than the danger. When I finally told him the truth, everything, from the prank to the phone call, he didn't react the way everyone else in my life would have. No jokes, no judgment, no surprised gasp. Just a slow shake of his head. That's not a prank, he said. That's a warning. A warning for what? I asked. That you've been giving more than you're getting for a long damn time. His words landed deeper than I expected. We reached the first small town about an hour later. A bus station sat at the edge of it. Tiny, cracked pavement, a schedule taped to the window with peeling Scotch tape. A bus could take me home, back to my wife, back to pretending things were fine, back to being the punchline. But the idea made my stomach twist. Caleb pulled the truck into a lot and put it in park. "Here's where you decide," he said softly. "I can drop you at that station and you can go back to the life you came from, or—" He took a breath. "I've got a friend upstate, runs a workshop, good man. He helps folks get back on their feet. You look like someone who needs a fresh start." A fresh start. The words hit me like a gust of wind after being trapped in a suffocating room. Nobody had ever offered me something like that. Not without strings, not without sarcasm, not without expectation. I looked at the bus station, then at the open road stretching north, then at Caleb, and for the first time in years, I chose myself. "Let's keep driving," I said. Caleb nodded once, and just like that, my old life faded behind us, mile by mile. Back home, my absence didn't register immediately. My wife and her brothers were still high on adrenaline and cheap beer, bragging about their legendary prank like they'd just pulled off a bank heist. They posted clips, laughed about my reaction, even took bets on how long it would take me to show up at the door, furious and embarrassed. But then, hours passed. Evening turned into night, and I didn't walk through the door. At first, she doubled down on the joke. "He's being dramatic," she said. "He's teaching us a lesson," her brothers insisted. But by the next morning, panic finally cracked through their confidence. They called. They texted. They left voicemails that sounded less like concern and more like fear of consequences. Then the police got involved, not because she admitted what they'd done, but because she crafted a brand new story. Suddenly, she was the worried wife whose husband wandered off during an argument and never returned. Not a single mention of the prank. Not a whisper about leaving me 300 miles from home. She couldn't risk anyone knowing. Her brothers backed her up, rehearsed lines like school children before a play. He seemed upset. He needed space. He walked off on his own. Meanwhile, the officers asked basic questions. Where had we been? Why had I left? What had caused the fight? My wife stumbled through every answer. Her brothers contradicted each other. Their story had more holes than a fishing net. Still, they stuck to it. Days passed. Search teams came up empty. Friends whispered, neighbors stared, and finally it hit them. I wasn't coming home, not because I was missing, but because I'd chosen to disappear. From them, from the chaos, and from the life that had swallowed me whole for far too long. Caleb's truck rolled into a small northern town just as the late afternoon sun was dipping into amber. It wasn't the kind of place you find on postcards. No skyscrapers, no neon, just wide streets, brick buildings, and a quiet rhythm that felt strangely familiar, like a memory I'd forgotten I had. The workshop sat at the end of a gravel road, a large metal building with big bay doors and a hand-painted sign that read, "Restoration and Repair, no judgment, just work." Inside, the air smelled like sawdust and motor oil, a scent sharp enough to cut right through the exhaustion that had been clinging to me for days. Tools lined the walls. Wooden tables held half-finished projects, chairs with new legs, engines waiting for new life, pieces of things people had once thrown away, but someone believed could still be saved. A stocky man with a silver beard stepped out from behind a table. "This him?" he asked. "Yeah," Caleb replied. "He needs a place to land." The man nodded once, firm but kind. "Name's Harris." He didn't ask why I was there. He didn't demand explanations or details or proof that I deserved help. He simply said, "You hungry?" and handed me a plate of leftover barbecue like I'd been expected all along. That night, I slept in a small room above the workshop, the kind of place with mismatched furniture, a creaky bed frame, and a window that overlooked the gravel yard. And yet, it felt more like home than anything I'd known in years. The next morning, Harris put a wrench in my hand. "We fix what's broken," he said, "including people. If you're willing to work, you're welcome here." Work became my therapy. I sanded old wood smooth again. I rebuilt engines piece by piece. I learned how to repair the things life had trained me to throw away. And with every bolt tightened, every joint secured, something inside me quietly began to rebuild itself too. The workshop wasn't just a place. It was a refuge for men who had been overlooked, underestimated, or discarded by the people they loved. A brotherhood forged not through blood, but through survival. Days turned into weeks, weeks into months, and slowly, almost without noticing, I stopped looking backward. My old life no longer felt like something I'd escaped from, but something I'd outgrown. It was nearly a year into my new life when the past finally found its way to me, not in the form of a person, but in a fat white envelope with my name typed in stiff, cold letters. It showed up at the workshop one morning, slipped into the mail pile between invoices and tool catalogs. Harris dropped it on my workbench without comment. But the look he gave me said he knew exactly what was inside. I stared at it for a long moment before opening it. Divorce papers, neatly printed, perfect margins. A signature line she hadn't even bothered to sign herself yet, as if she wanted me to take the first step, as if I should be the one to make her feel better about what she'd done. Tucked inside was a handwritten note, thin, shaky handwriting I recognized immediately. "I've been so worried. I don't know why you left. Please sign so we can both move on." Move on. From what exactly? A prank that could have cost me my life? Years of belittling, mocking, minimizing everything I did? The note didn't mention the police search, or the lies she told, or the videos she deleted when people started asking questions. No apology, no accountability. Just a request to make her stress go away. For the first time since leaving, I felt absolutely nothing toward her. Not hate, not sadness, just nothingness. A kind of emotional quiet I'd never known with her. I folded the paper back into the envelope and sealed it shut. Harris walked by, paused. "You signing it?" "No," I said simply. "Not yet." Not because I wanted her back, but because she didn't get to close a chapter she never understood. I wasn't ready to give her the ending she wanted, not when I was still writing my own. Time has a strange way of softening some things and sharpening others. In the first few months after the divorce papers arrived, I half expected my old life to chase me down. Angry phone calls, police at the workshop door, her brothers showing up demanding explanations, but nothing came. No one came. The world I'd left behind simply stopped reaching for me. And in that silence, I started to breathe again. The workshop became more than a job. It became a place where broken things were allowed to become whole again. I learned how to weld, how to restore classic cars, how to strip old wood until the grain told a story. Harris taught with patience. Caleb taught with quiet pride. And the other guys, men who had also been left, betrayed, or forgotten, became the closest thing to family I had ever known. The work toughened my hands. The peace toughened my spirit. 1 year turned into 2, 2 into 3, then 4. By the 5th year, I was a different man entirely. My shoulders were broader, my hair was longer. The stress that used to clamp my chest had dissolved like rust under fresh paint. I laughed more, slept deeper, walked with a purpose I'd never known before. The mirror no longer reflected the timid, apologetic man my wife once shaped me into. Instead, it showed someone rebuilt from the inside out. The biggest change came when Harris handed me a set of keys to the workshop's front office. "You run this place as much as I do," he said. "Might as well make it official." Co-owner. A title my old life would have laughed at. A title I'd earned. Sometimes customers took pictures of their restored cars, tagging the workshop online. I figured one day those photos might reach the wrong eyes. But I didn't hide. I wasn't running anymore. 5 years of silence had transformed me into a man who no longer needed to explain his disappearance. I hadn't vanished. I had arrived somewhere I should have been all along. And fate, as it turns out, had been quietly preparing the moment my past would come knocking again. Only this time, I wasn't the one who would break. It happened on a Thursday, one of those warm, easy afternoons where the workshop doors were rolled open and sunlight poured across the concrete floors like liquid gold. Caleb was working on a carburetor, humming some old country song under his breath. I was out front sanding the fender of a '68 Mustang, lost in the rhythm of it. Then I heard the bell on the front door, a small sound, harmless. But something in it, some soft, unfamiliar hesitation, made me look up. She stepped inside, my wife, 5 years older, hair straighter, shoulders tighter, but unmistakably her. Same careful smile she always used when she wanted something. Same eyes scanning a room like she expected applause to rise up around her. For a moment, she didn't recognize me. Her gaze passed right over me, lingering instead on the machinery, the tools, the open space. She looked like someone walking into a museum dedicated to a history she didn't understand. Then her eyes landed on me again and stuck. I watched the confusion flicker first, like a glitch, then the dawning realization. Her lips parted slowly, disbelief bending her expression into something I'd never seen on her face before. "You," she whispered. "Oh my God, it's really you." I kept my hands on the fender, steady, calm. I didn't step toward her, didn't give her the relief of a smile. The version of me she remembered, the man who bent, apologized, folded, didn't live here anymore. She let out a shaky laugh. "You look different. I almost didn't recognize you." "I know," I said simply. She took a few hesitant steps forward. "I've been looking for you, for years. I saw a photo. Someone tagged your shop, and I had to come." Of course she did. Curiosity wasn't enough. She needed control, closure, validation that the man she discarded hadn't become someone without her. But she had no idea what she'd walked into. No idea how much the ground had shifted beneath her, because her smile, hopeful, trembling, began to fade the moment she sensed movement behind me. She had finally found me. But she wasn't prepared for who else she was about to meet. She froze mid-step, her eyes flicking upward past my shoulder, drawn by a presence she couldn't see yet but could feel. I didn't turn around. I didn't have to. I already knew who was standing behind me. I'd felt him walk up long before the sound of his boots reached us. Her smile, thin, hopeful, trembling, wilted like a dying flower. Who is that?" she whispered, her voice tightening. Caleb stood just a few feet behind me, wiping his hands with the same old grease-stained rag he'd offered me the day we met. His expression wasn't angry. It wasn't intimidating. It was simply unreadable. The kind of calm that makes people nervous because they can't tell what's coming next. But it wasn't just Caleb. 2 uniformed officers stepped into the doorway behind him, then a man in a suit, my lawyer, and beside him, a quiet, sharp-eyed woman holding a thick folder, the private investigator. They didn't fan out dramatically or storm in. They simply entered steady and deliberate, as if this moment had been scheduled for months. Her knees visibly weakened. "Wait," she stammered, lifting her hands as if to shield herself from something invisible. Why are officers here? What is this?" Caleb spoke first, voice even. "They're here because he asked them to be." She looked at me, horror creeping into her expression. "Ask them? For what? I came all this way to talk, to fix things, to what?" I cut in. "To rewrite the past? To pretend you didn't leave me on the side of a highway and laugh about it?" Her face drained of color. It was a mistake. A stupid joke. I didn't think that's the problem," the investigator said, stepping forward. "You didn't think at all." She opened the folder, revealing printed screenshots, transcripts, timestamps, evidence preserved long after she assumed the internet forgets. My wife's eyes darted wildly. Between me, Caleb, the officers, the documents. You planned this," she whispered. "No," I replied. "You did, 5 years ago, when you drove away." And in that moment, she finally understood. She hadn't found me to reunite. She'd walked straight into the reckoning she created. The investigator laid the folder on the workbench with a soft thump, the kind of sound that tells you something heavy is about to change everything. My wife flinched at it like the paper itself had teeth. The woman opened it with clinical precision. Each page she turned felt like a countdown. "We'll start with this," she said, sliding forward a printed screenshot. My wife's face darted toward it and immediately blanched. It was a message thread. Her brothers joking about my disappearance, her laughing along with them, all time-stamped, all saved. "You said you were worried," the investigator continued, "but worry doesn't sound like this." She placed another page beside it. This one, a video transcript pulled from a deleted social media post, the one they recorded as they drove away, joking about leaving me behind. "We recovered the original file," the investigator said. "Funny thing about the internet, nothing ever really disappears." My wife's hands trembled, clutched together like she was trying to keep herself from falling apart. But the folder wasn't done. Next came emails, dozens of them, between her and her brothers, coordinating their stories for the police. Lines like, "Don't mention the prank, just say he walked off." Then financial documents, insurance claims filed just weeks after I vanished, claims I never signed, claims with forged signatures and false statements, claims that could put someone in jail. "This is fraud," my lawyer said calmly, tapping the papers. "Multiple counts, and each one carries real penalties." My wife shook her head, eyes glossy with panic. No, I didn't mean I was scared. I didn't know what else to do." "You didn't know what else to do," Caleb echoed quietly. "So you lied. Again, and again, and again." She looked at me then, desperate, pleading, the same expression she used whenever she wanted to dodge responsibility. "You can't let them do this," she whispered. "Please, we were married. We loved each other." "No," I said. "I loved you. You loved control." The officers stepped closer, not aggressively, just present, grounding the moment with their silent authority. My wife finally understood. This wasn't a reunion. This wasn't forgiveness. This was the moment her actions caught up to her. And for the first time in her life, there was nowhere left to run. The workshop felt impossibly still, like even the dust hanging in the sunlight refused to move. My wife stood there trembling, her breath coming in tight, ragged pulls. She looked smaller than I'd ever seen her, like the truth had drained every ounce of power she once wielded over me. "I didn't know it would go this far," she whispered, eyes flicking between the officers and the damning folder on the table. "I just panicked. I didn't mean to hurt you." "Hurt me?" The words almost made me laugh. "You didn't mean to?" I stepped closer, not aggressive, just present. "You left me 300 miles from home. You laughed. You recorded it. And when I didn't come back, you protected yourself, not me." Her eyes filled with tears. I was scared. "No," I said. "You were embarrassed. There's a difference." She reached out then, fingers trembling, a gesture she used to make when she wanted comfort, forgiveness, or a quick reset after an ugly fight. I didn't move. "Please," she breathed. "We can fix this. You can tell them you don't want charges. We can start over." I shook my head slowly. I already started over. Her face crumpled. My lawyer stepped forward, sliding a set of papers toward her. "These are formal charges and notices of civil action. You'll need to appear in court." Her knees buckled slightly, and she caught herself on the edge of the workbench. "You're doing this to me?" she whispered, voice hollow. "You did this to yourself," I said softly. "All I ever did was finally stop shielding you from the consequences." The officers moved to escort her outside. She looked back at me one last time, shattered, and for the first time in our entire marriage, I didn't feel guilt. I felt release. The officers guided her toward the door, their movements calm but deliberate. Nothing forceful, just the quiet certainty of people who deal in consequences for a living. She stumbled once, catching herself on the metal doorframe, her breath uneven. For years, she walked with the confidence of someone who believed the world would always bend for her. Now she walked like someone realizing it never would again. Caleb stayed behind me, arms crossed, silent as stone. A presence, a reminder, a witness to the person I'd become, someone who didn't shrink under guilt or manipulation anymore. As she stepped outside into the sunlight, she turned to me, eyes red and glassy. "I didn't think you'd ever hate me," she whispered. I stepped forward just enough that she could hear me clearly. "I don't hate you," I said. "Hating you would mean you still have a piece of me. You don't." Her face tightened, like the words were sharper than anything the legal system could deliver. She opened her mouth, maybe to apologize, maybe to beg one more time, but the officers gently motioned for her to keep moving. She did. Watching her walk across the gravel lot felt surreal, not triumphant, not vindictive, just final. A chapter closing with the soft click of a door you don't ever intend to open again. One of the officers paused beside me. "We'll be in touch," he said. "You did the right thing." I nodded, though the strange truth was, I didn't feel like a man who'd done something brave. I felt like a man who had finally stopped running from himself. As the squad car pulled away, dust rising behind it, Caleb clapped a hand on my shoulder. "Let it go," he said quietly, and I did. Right there in the warm afternoon air, I exhaled the last remnants of a life that no longer belonged to me. In the weeks that followed, the workshop settled back into its steady rhythm. Metal clinking, sanders buzzing, the radio humming old songs in the background, but something inside me had shifted. Lighter, clearer. Like I'd finally stepped out of a shadow I didn't realize I'd been living under. People in town had heard whispers about what happened, but no one pried. They respected silence here. They respected endurance even more. And every morning when I unlocked the workshop doors, the cool metal key in my hand felt like a symbol of ownership, of freedom, of a life rebuilt from scorched earth. Caleb joked that I smiled more now. Harris said I walked straighter. The guys teased me about having the posture of a man who'd finally realized he didn't owe anyone an apology for existing. Maybe they were right. One evening, after closing up, I stood outside the workshop and watched the sunset paint the sky in gold and fire. My old life had been a cage disguised as a home. This life, unexpected, unplanned, was something I'd built with my own hands, piece by piece, choice by choice. My wife's charges went through. Her brothers folded immediately, offering statements that made the legal process faster than anyone expected. The investigator said it was one of the cleanest cases she'd ever handled. There were no more calls, no more surprise visits, no pleading letters, just silence, a different kind this time, peaceful, final. Sometimes people ask how I managed to start over after being abandoned like that. Truth is, it wasn't the abandonment that changed me. It was what came after. The kindness of a stranger, the patience of a mentor, The community of men who knew what it felt like to be broken and rebuilt anyway. And the realization that the person I used to be wasn't weak. He was simply waiting for a place where he could finally breathe. So I stayed. I lived. I thrived. And every now and then, when the past tries to whisper its way back into my ear, I look around at the life I built and say the only thing that matters. Leaving me wasn't the joke you thought it was. It was the beginning of everything.